Understanding the basic principles of rut riding and turning those principles into being able to ride ruts really well, well, those are different things. There are, however, some very simple drills that can take you from practicing your bike crab impression to riding ruts like someone who vaguely knows what they're doing. In the last season on MiniTip Monday, I made a video on the basic principles of rut riding. And to get the most from this video, I'd really suggest you watch that one too. I'll pop it at the end of the video.
However, to go from understanding the principles of riding ruts to actually being able to put that into practice in the real world, there's a few steps that I think we need to go through. You see, the way we learn is never linear. You can't read some information and then immediately be an expert at something. Our brains need data points. And to learn those data points, we need some help. We need some steps along the way that are going to get us there. Now with ruts, you are never going to be able to ride every single rut perfectly.
At some point, even the best riders on the planet won't get them right. So before you can ride them perfectly, you need to learn to manage mistakes and be able to stop and start in ruts. This is a big part of being able to do this well.
When I teach this, we go through 3 separate exercises. And the first of these is going to help you with solving the mistakes that you make when you're learning to ride ruts. We can solve the mistake, we can then work on not crashing every time we ride into a rut and make a mistake. Makes the process of learning much easier. To start with, I think you want something that is pretty straightforward. It's nice and straight, it's not covered in vegetation, it's not full of deep bumps and water. The less of that, the easier this process is. For this reason, I quite like ruts made by cars or 4x4s. They generally are quite straight. They're a little bit wider in the bottom, which is more forgiving, and that makes it easier. If you try and learn this in dirt bike ruts, that is very difficult, especially on a big adventure bike, because they're so narrow that the precision you need to ride them well is very difficult. Exercise 1 is to learn to pull away in a rut confidently every single time. Now there is a nice set of process that you can go through to learn to do this. Firstly, we're going to stand up with one foot on the ground and one foot on the foot peg.
Now we're going to put most of our weight on the foot peg and make sure the heel is going down so that we're actually pushing down on the peg. I can balance the bike by doing this with the bike pushed against the inside of my leg, and that gets the balance of everything completely set.
Now if the balance isn't set properly, as you pull away, you're going to wobble all over the place and it'll be really hard to get the bike to ride in a straight line. It's also really difficult to not look like Michael Jackson when you're only wearing one glove. I don't know why I'm wearing only one glove. I'll put the other one on. Now with your balance set and me having 2 gloves on, the next step is we're going to find the bite point with the clutch and we're going to keep it right on that bite point.
Trying to start with the clutch pulled to the bars and then magically find it at the moment that you're trying to do everything else, well, I think you've got more chance of finding gold at the end of a rainbow.
I'm going to put my helmet on for this next bit.
My lovely Llel helmet. Plug! Nice plug! Plug the Llel helmet. It's very good, comfortable, nice. With your weight set, my weight's on the foot peg, and the bite point of the clutch found, you can see the bike's trying to creep there. We can then get ourselves ready to go by adding a little bit of revs. As the bike starts to creep forward, we can push off and keep pushing off the rut side. Once you've done this a handful of times on both sides of the bike, we can move on to the next step and start the mistake correction.
Now that we can pull away and stop in ruts and do that relatively comfortably, the next step is learning to correct the mistakes that we make and learning to correct them as quickly as possible. That's really important for being able to ride a lot of different types of ruts comfortably, not just wishing the world would swallow you whole.
To learn this, I would suggest practicing in an easy place with low consequence. This can be on a curb, a raised bank, or anything that's not insanely hard for you to put a foot on. Your rut can also work for this, depending a little on your confidence level and a little on how difficult your rut is.
The lesson here is to ride along slowly. We're talking first gear, maybe even a little bit slower with the clutch in to control the speed. You don't want this to be a frantic exercise.
I'm going to pick the spot I want to dab my foot on the ground
and do so, making sure that I push off the ground as I keep moving. This dab is intended to help you regain your balance when you lose it, and it's the first rut correction technique to learn. The goal of this is to get comfortable with the movement and efficient at not messing up the other controls like the clutch and the throttle as your body moves. This is really your safety catch when we're riding ruts. So the slower you are to react when you need to have a dab, or the clumsier you are with the controls when you do it, the harder it's going to be. So the quicker we can learn this, the better. Once you're happy with those 2 lessons and you feel like you've really got them dialed in, we can move on to the third part. This is a little bit like the wax on, wax off from the Karate Kid.
Wax on, wax off.
If you don't put the effort into making sure that you really are comfortable with the first 2, the third one is significantly more difficult than it would otherwise be. And the third step to riding ruts is to practice actually riding the rut. You are looking to focus on all the basics I mentioned in that other video. They really make a large difference and will typically be the difference between you doing it well and doing it badly. If you're comfy pulling away, standing up, and taking a dab when you get off balance, it'll be much easier to manage getting through ruts repeatedly, and your progress will be significantly quicker. It also means that when you find yourself in a much trickier situation, a really disgusting rut, you will still be able to manage. Now, the most common beginner mistake in all of this conversation is waiting too long to have that dab that I've already taught you how to have. If you wait too long, it gets you into trouble, so make sure you get it in nice and early. Now that you can ride ruts, there's one more lesson in the rut game that's really useful to have, changing ruts. But that video is a Patreon exclusive, so if you want to see that, come and check out what we've got going on Patreon. And otherwise, remember, life's better when you're riding.